So big week of football, really, just because we've got a lot of the college football playoff. Everybody's focused on Notre Dame not getting in. The whole deal with Alabama, again, finding a way to get in. I swear, it's like, if we don't have a playoff with Alabama, is it really a college football playoff? It's basically like, look, I think people need to understand as well, like, everybody's always mad about all this stuff, and there is not going to ever be a really good way of figuring this out. And I think too, like, we all have to keep in mind, like, ESPN basically controls everything, and they're not going to leave an SEC team. Like, once we just get over that and get beyond that, then we can all move on and start actually talking about what's going on the field.
Exactly. And I mean, it's Alabama, and like that, let's face it, they're and I think if Alabama was like the 23rd best team in the country, they wouldn't let them in. But at the same time, if they're gonna be in the mix, of course they're gonna have one of the biggest brands in college football in. Like, I mean, USC's not in, but you better believe if they were the 13th best team in the country, they'd be like, all right, put them in. And that's why this Notre Dame Miami conversation was very interesting. It was Catholics versus convicts is the old rivalry, and it's like two pretty comparable brands. I think Notre Dame is a bit bigger than Miami just because Miami has that one era, but at the same time, two big brands. And like, who's going to make it in? Well, they played. It was pretty simple. Yeah, you just kind of keep moving forward and have it like that. And I think it's Notre Dame not being in a conference hurts them again, because it's like, you don't play this week. You don't have this extra notch in your belt to say, like, we're better than this one team or another. And it is just like, if they would have won the ACC or whatever it was this year in particular, where there wasn't a team in the ACC that was just like, yeah, we're just better than everyone else. Notre Dame wins that conference. Oh, yeah, it makes things a lot more interesting. If they get in the mix in the Big Ten or something like that, it makes things a lot more interesting. But Notre Dame is never in those conversations. So this conversation is always going to be had with them.
Yeah, and I thought Joey McGuire had the best of Texas Tech, had the best argument. One, he said, if you leave BYU out, that's a crime on BYU, because the only loss they have is to the number 4 team in the country. They've lost twice to Texas Tech. Both of those games were really close. Also, I think McGuire, coming from a Texas high school background, if you don't know anything about Texas high school football, it is essentially a 6-round playoff. Mm-hmm. So the championship teams will have played 16 games. So they've figured it out. And I think his argument to it and I like this, I think college football should be done by January 2nd. It shouldn't, like it used to be. It's so funny that we make things so complex. We're like, oh, there's a better way of doing it. Let's make it really complex. Let's drag it out. I mean, I even would argue too, like, the NFL season is a little bit long too. Like, going all the way into almost like mid-February, like, that's almost too long.
Super Bowl's going to be on Valentine's Day here in a couple of years.
Right. I mean, really, you want football to end, like, the NFL should end, like, probably right at the end of January, that first week of February at the latest. We added another game, and then everybody has a bye week, and then they're a week out, like almost 2 weeks after college football now. So I get, like, the whole point of, like, we want to drag this out because of, like, we keep it. And then also football, you can only have one game a week. But to his point, because of the transfer portal and because of all of this stuff, like, you can't have kids transferring. Think about this, Felix. You will have a kid who potentially could play in the national championship and then transfer to a brand new school that same month. Like, and the semester's already started. So to his point, I think that's right. Like, college football should end before the second semester begins. So it should end either that first week, really that first weekend
during Christmas break.
Yeah. Look, the FCS does it. Why can we not have the same thing? And look, if everybody's going to opt out of these bowls, like, just go. The one thing that people need to understand about this whole thing is that the NCAA, when it comes to football, is a paper tiger. It's really just the schools are allowing the NCAA to have any kind of oversight. College football at the highest level does not have an NCAA tournament. You will not see one NCAA logo anywhere in any of these bowl games. And the reason why is because all of that football money funnels into football. It doesn't funnel into the NCAA and then is divvied out like it is in these Olympic sports and then like really any other sport. So football is unique in that sense. And so like there needs to be, I do agree, like with a lot of these head coaches, there needs to be some sort of like like an FBS college football czar. And let's just get over it at this point. Like the Power Four conferences probably need to have their own division. They need to just have, and what they need to really do is make it an even 64 teams. Just make it an even 64 teams. And then you can, like every league in the world, the top half makes the playoff, make it a 32-team playoff. If you make it, or make it a 16-game playoff, they're in pods of 8. I mean, look, the NFL does it with 32. You're just doubling that up. Let's get over the fact that these kids, like if we're going to have kids transfer like in mid-March to a school, you tell me how that's going to work academically. Yeah, they're not student athletes. They're athletes that work for a school.
Yeah, it's like, we have some overtime work for you. It's these philosophy classes we've got for you. Some of these sociology credits we need you to nab up. All right. Aside from the conference championships, which Georgia gets a big win over Alabama, I wasn't expecting that massive of a win from Georgia over Alabama. Then Duke, they steal the ACC over Virginia, and it's been your favorite line for this league, I guess, over this season. And Cody, how would you describe it?
Yeah, this league is drunk. So like, yeah, sure. They're going to have moments of clarity where you're like, oh yeah, no, man, I got this together. Wow. And then they're going to fall down the steps because they're completely drunk. And then they have Duke win. I mean, look, the most ACC thing in 2025 would have been Duke backdooring its way into the ACC championship. Basically, everybody that needed to lose lost in the last week, which is hilarious. They backed their way into the ACC championship. They play Virginia, which, by the way, is hilarious as well, that Virginia is representing. I mean, when was the last time Virginia football has been any good? We've talked about Virginia.
Tony Elliott.
Right. Well, and look, I'm not knocking Virginia at all. It's just the fact that we don't have where's Florida State? Where's Miami? Where's
Clemson?
Where's Clemson? And then even everybody that had the reins, like SMU falls down. My team in Louisville ends up kind of falling at the very end of the season. And then what you have a 7-5 team. And then Manny Diaz has the nerve at the end of the game being like, well, we have some of the best wins in all of college football. Like nobody in the college football playoffs going to have. And I'm like, bro, you're 7-5. There's no way that they are letting you into the playoffs. What are we doing? So yeah,
Power Four champ. What's up?
Yeah,
so the criteria.
God, the college football playoff committee was just thanking the Lord that they did not have automatic bids. Oh my gosh, could you imagine if the ACC had an automatic bid this year? Wildness. So of course, ACC did the most ACC thing ever. Duke wins, and of course, it was in overtime. So they had to drag it out. They couldn't just settle it in a regular 60-minute regulation.
All right, before we talk about the playoff bracket, final spins of the coaching carousel, I guess. Matt Campbell goes to Penn State. Jimmy Rogers goes from Washington State to Iowa State. Then just kind of a weird one, Chris Kleiman from K-State retires on signing day. Colin Klein, the offensive coordinator from Texas A&M, taking the job at his alma mater, the favorite son from for us from this general area know, and coaching that conference for that time, how special he was to that school. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about those couple of things. And then one more interesting thing, Brent Pry staying on at Virginia Tech, the school that just fired him literally a couple of weeks ago, keeping him as the defensive coordinator. Yeah. Kind of interesting there, but final thoughts on the last spins of the coaching carousel.
Yeah, the Pry thing was basically his wife didn't want to move, so she was like, "You're going to get a job. You work for Franklin. Franklin, you got this job because of him. You're just going to walk over. You go walk over to the facility and tell him you're not leaving. I'm going to be your DC. I mean, Pry was a great defensive coordinator. I think people forget, like, because you've had Manny Diaz, you've had some other people, like, but Pry was a great defensive coordinator for him. So I totally see that. He's basically the Vance Joseph of college football, going back. I thought climbing the whole there's a lot of smoke there. I know, like, you're a little bit more into it because you're from Kansas, but there's like a lot of stuff going on. I guess he had some, issues last year that he was thinking about retiring. This year, it was just kind of that. Then the AD had that real kind of cryptic, like, the state of college football is why he's retiring. And so I think that this is a good move. K-State is one of those programs, and you know this probably just as well as anybody. It is one of those programs where you really need a Bill Snyder guy. Like, it has to be one of those things where it's like, in order to win there, you have to know what works to get kids there and what works in that environment. It's a really special place. It's one of the coolest places I've ever been at the college level. It's really, really neat. Small town, but also the whole environment. The facilities, everything are really nice. So I'm glad Klein got that. I mean, I don't think, like, who else. Venables ain't coming back.
I was gonna say it was a very, very, very short list on who was gonna get that job and who fans were gonna be happy with getting that job, and they might have burned Bill Snyder Family Stadium had not Bill Snyder Jr. Like, if Sean Snyder wasn't gonna get the job, Colin Klein was gonna have to get that job. So, like, it was gonna be like everything was gonna have to be work out that way, but it makes sense because of, like, what he's done at Texas A&M these last couple of years as the offensive coordinator. And obviously, like, just being a part of what Elko's doing down there, it just makes a lot of sense. All right, playoff bracket. We haven't talked much about it because it didn't change a ton of the playoff seeding, but Indiana winning the Big Ten over Ohio State. I know we were talking Jimmy Rogers a second ago. But Indiana, of the number one team in the country, who would have believed this 2.5 years ago? And so as we head into the playoff bracket, who are some of these underdogs, these teams that may have better paths than others? Just because, I mean, obviously Indiana, it deserves where they need to be, but Ohio State has a path now that is a little bit different than what it would have been if they were the number one seed. And so, like, how do you like some of these different paths in these first round matchups?
Yeah, I think everybody's mad. Really, the whole thing is, like, people are just mad that there's 2 G5 teams in and Notre Dame's not sitting out. I mean, I know people want to see the Gold Dome.
And my biggest thing with the G5 teams is, like, what are you gonna do with them though? Like, if they have these seasons, they're 11-1, 12-1, 11-2, or whatever it is. What are you gonna do with them? They deserve to be somewhere.
Well, and that's
they didn't, like a UCF team from a couple years ago. If they're undefeated, you got to put them somewhere.
Right. And that's why that's why my argument is that, look, just separate them out. Like, we already have an FCS. Like, why can't we have, there's 136 teams in the FBS. Like, the 64 top teams, like, really the P4 right now, I think, is almost at like 56. You're only adding like 8 more teams, maybe. Like, just get to a round number so that you can have like 18, like, you can have like
Boise
4
State and a few other teams and just keep it moving.
Well, here's the other thing too. And, like, college football is regional. It's not the NFL. Like, it's a completely different map. It's a completely different game. It's a completely different, just everything. Like, it's a regional thing. So, like, yes, UCLA and USC playing a Big Ten game against, Ohio State or Rutgers. Like, yeah, that's a weird thing. Like, we should, like, I really think, like, look, the simplest answer is typically the best answer. The simplest answer, again, I'm sorry we're getting back on our soapbox here with, like, 15 minutes into the show, but it's like, just do the right thing. Create a 64 super squad team. They can play in their little pods. Make everyone. It's a 16 team division. You play 9 opponents. Just randomly do it. Sure, you can have a protected rivalry or whatever, and then you rotate within that, and then they get one money game that they can play a G5 team or they can play an FCS team. I think you just get rid of the FCS teams. I know a lot of people are like, well, that's how they fund programs. I get that, but I'm just saying, like, we know where we're going. All right, sorry to get off. I will get off my soapbox right there. Sorry, Felix and everybody listening.
Let's just hire Cody as the college football commissioner. Let's just do it.
Yeah, I know. Like, what is it? The Josh Pate guy wants it. Like,
Yeah.
hey, look, dude, I'll be your assistant. We can figure this
Saban's
thing
like,
out.
fine, I'll do it.
It's not that hard. It's not that hard. So, look, if you're looking for a G5 team that can be a dark horse in terms of just can win in the first round, I think the best answer for that is going to be Tulane. Tulane has already played Ole Miss. They're familiar with it. You have a little bit of kind of the weirdness going on with Ole Miss, just in terms of, Kiffin's gone. Some of the offensive staff is back. Golding was basically saying, I'm not Kiffin. I'm not going to do yoga. That's going to work really well until you don't win like Kiffin and you're not winning 10 games. But I think he'll do fine. But you have a little bit of disjointment there. That's where I think if there's one team that can surprise, I think it could be Tulane.
Right. And to be fair, Summerall's gone to Florida as well to see what they're going to be able to do. Tulane's head coach. But, I mean, I think you're right. Tulane has been like one of these G5 teams that have been more consistent over these last couple of years. It's not just like this one hot coach. Willie Fritz was good there 4 or 5 years ago. And so it is going to be interesting to see here. But some of these more marquee first round matchups, Bama versus OU, and then Miami versus A&M. You're a big fan of A&M as a dark horse because of a path here.
Yeah, they don't have to play Texas. I think that's the key here. We see this all the time. I mean, even in the Michigan. Now, this year wasn't one of those examples, but even within like the Michigan-Ohio State, I mean, think about like Michigan has beaten Ohio State when there's no way that they should have done it. We've seen Ohio State beat Michigan when they should not have done it. I think like anytime the A&M and Texas play each other, it's always big brother versus little brother. And I think that there's a little bit of tightness around the Aggies just in particular. And so you always kind of get that weirdness in that game. I think the Bama versus OU game is probably the marquee game. Neither one of these offenses are stellar. I think defensively they're really good. I'm like, if you're just like a kind of like a scheme nerd, that's probably the one game that you want to watch. I think both of those defenses are really good.
And I think if you're Alabama, it's like the only team, a fan at least, it's the only team outside of Georgia where it's like, again, we have to play them again. Like we beat just about everybody else on a regular basis, but them again, because Venables has things going, at least in these last 2 years, that like, hell, we got to go against a really, at least a team that's not afraid of us.
Well, and I just think Venables finally, and I wrote about it earlier in the year with Oklahoma, like he finally has that defense, like the back to where it was when he left to go to Clemson. I mean, he's now got his defenses where they were with Clemson. I think he's finally fixed the defensive line. He's got secondary players like he had at Clemson. I think that you look all around it, it's difficult. Look, the Mateer kid was fun at the beginning. He's kind of a beefier, more run-oriented Baker Mayfield. I know that that's what a lot of people like to kind of give him that whole deal. I think the A&M quarterback is fun. So, like, looking at this, I mean, look, Ty Simpson, arguably, probably argument for best quarterback that has potential to play in the NFL. I think with Miami, Carson Beck, I just think you talk about somebody that people just love to hate. He's part of that. I think he fits that whole mold of Miami. I think people love to hate Miami just because it's Miami. And so I'm like, he fits that mold. Like some of the stuff he says, you're just like, bro, you're the quarterback. Like, just be quiet, But so I think, to me, I think the Bama OU game is probably the most watchable. I think the Miami versus A&M, I like A&M. That's what you mentioned. I like A&M as a dark horse. I think Elko is one of the best, if not the best defensive coordinator. I know Venables would argue that with you in the NFL. I mean, not in the NFL, but in college football. They don't have to play Texas. Look, I think too, a team that is going to be really fun is Texas Tech. This is not
your swag to them too.
This is not Texas Tech, like the Texas Tech I remember from 10 years ago, the Texas Tech that I coached against.
That anybody remembers ever.
That anybody remembers. They have a defense. And guess what? They have Shield Wood, who, if you do not know who Shield Wood is, he is part of that East Coast 3-4 Mafia. He is part of that Army Corps, that App State guys, so that little got the Wofford defense that is essentially permeated through all of the Southland. So they know how to play defense. That defensive line is good. And they've got one of the best linebackers in college football. So I think the question here for you, Felix, is I think Diego Pavia is going to win the Heisman. But the real race for the number one, oh yeah, come on, he's lovable. Everybody's going to look and like there is literally, who are you going to vote for? No one. Maybe Fernando Mendoza, maybe. So who do you go for? You go for the fun guy. Let's get him up there. Let's get the whole. Have you seen the video of his brother like talking trash to the
Yeah.
like pull him aside? Like the whole family's a hot mess. I love it. Let's get Diego Pavia the Heisman. Now, the question for you though is this basically a championship for the first pick in the draft? You have Ty Simpson, Dante Moore, and Fernando Mendoza. Whoever wins this is going to win the number one pick in the NFL draft.
Yeah, it is going to be kind of interesting to see because I like, you know how they like, you're obviously the football guy. You probably don't even know what basketball is, but in the NCAA tournament, the if you want to win the tournament, it's kind of like, how do you win it? What do you need? What are these key things? It's like guard play. And I think at least in this tournament, it's kind of about like, who's that quarterback who can at least kind of drive your team like a great point guard could, like a Kemba Walker or Shabazz Napier, or just insert any UConn guard, just put them there. And so I think that all of these guys fit all of those categories, but also they could be the number one pick in the draft. And so it is going to be kind of interesting where you see like owners in the NFL draft, they'll always like, you know, it's kind of like what happened with Shedeur. It's like, draft this guy because I like him and not because of like our scouts actually went through things. And like, this could be the moment where it's like, yeah, take Dante Moore over Fernando Mendoza, even though Fernando Mendoza might actually be the better prospect, might have the better career, whatever it is, because Dante Moore or whomever else had a better couple of games, or what, it may not even win the national championship because Ohio State has the better team, or Indy, or whatever, one of these other guys has the better team. And so that's what's so interesting about this. And like, I think that's what's so fun about college ball, is that you can have guys that are like a Marcel Reed that we've talked about over these last couple of weeks, where it's like, yeah, he's a great college quarterback. And like, there's some guys like Ali Farokhmanesh, where it's like, yeah, great corner 3-point shooter. He's not going to the league. And so like, I think there's different guys like that can kind of drive you to winning the national championship, or at least making a run. Like, I mean, Will Howard, he might get a few starts in the NFL, but at the same time, he won a national championship in college football, and he was huge for that team. And I think there are a couple of guys like that, but also have that number one pick quality and could have all of those big stretches, and could get drafted highly or even higher than what they even should be this year, just because there's not that many quarterbacks coming out.
No, I mean, there really isn't. And I know, like, I'm sure we've got some Ohio State fans who are like, hey, well, what about Sayin? I think if you watch, Sayin's kind of the same way.
That's more of a story of like, yeah, get it to Jeremiah and Carnell. It's awesome. Yeah. You're great. But it's about them, and your defense is just so elite and legendary. Just kind of keep things on the track.
Right. And before we get into the NFL, I mean, like, we really haven't even talked about it, but like the Indiana game, I think the story of the Indiana game is basically that defense came to play, and they did everything they could to double Jeremiah Smith. They had pretty much every cover 3 rotation I've ever seen, sprinkled in with some non-traditional Tampas, which just means Tampa 2, but they've got guys in all different spots. So you don't know who's doing what. They ran a ton of 3 cloud, which just means they're going to roll cover 3 to one guy. Well, guess who that was? Jeremiah Smith. I think Ohio State actually would have been better running a little bit more 11 personnel, just because when you have that one dude and you're getting in 13 personnel and they can just roll to that guy every time, then they were like, thank you. We'll do that. I thought I had a coaching buddy of mine basically say the most impressive thing about Indiana was not the kind of like the stuff they did on third down. It wasn't the coverage rotation. It was a fact that, dude, they were just some ass kickers in the run fits. Everybody knew where they were supposed to be. They had a hat on a hat. They had two on the polar. I mean, they did everything that you communicate as a coach of like, I want an inside and outside of the pole. I want a cap fitter in split field coverage. I thought that they did an excellent job. Haynes' simulated pressures and disguises are awesome. They run some of the highest simulated pressures, which just means that we're going to kind of fake a blitz, only going to rush 4. One of the best in the country. I actually would argue, like you mentioned it, Patricia's defense, if you go and watch Washington film from last year, so the Steve Belichick defense from last year, that's what Ohio State's running. There's really not a lot, and I'm going to say the quiet part out loud, there's not a lot of creativity in it. It's literally just a 5-man front. They get Penny, 5-1. They run cover 3, cover 1. They sprinkle in some Tampa 2s. And then they have some cool exotic blitzes. They're going to bring out one just because he's an NFL guy. He wants to prove that he can, Wink Martindale's not the only guy that can create a really cool pressure on third down. But then that's it. And then they just have better talent than everybody else. And so that's kind of where I'm at with Ohio State. That's why I think when things get tight, like in Indiana, it comes down to coaching and it comes down to the technique and fundamentals. And I thought Indiana was the better team there.
We're going to get there in a second, but that sounds a lot like the Texans-Chiefs game. Yeah, it was just like they were going to line up and kick your ass, and the Chiefs were just like...
Yeah, yes. So let's dive into the NFL. Let's stay in Indiana. The Colts have not beaten the Jaguars since 2014 in Jacksonville, which I think is insane. For over 10 years, they have not won a game in Jacksonville. They have completely fallen off the wagon. I mean, completely. And then you got Daniel Jones hurt. Both these teams were 8-4 going in. The Jags defense, if you do not know this, is 3rd in EPA per play in the last month. This defense has become elite. I was talking to our buddy Deanie Heifetz at the Ringer, and I was like, look, if there's one team that I don't want to see in the in the AFC, and this is going to sound insane, but it's one team I don't want to see in the playoff, is the Jaguars. They only have to really play the Broncos in that last month. If they lose the Broncos, it doesn't matter.
And even then, you're like, they got some playmakers. Because,
yes.
Brian Thomas makes a few plays. All of a sudden, Devin Lloyd has a pick for you. And, it's just like, oh, snap, Josh Hines Allen.
You forget how good their defensive line is. It's a bunch of first-round draft picks on the defensive line. It's a bunch of first-round draft picks at linebacker. They went out and got a couple guys in the secondary. They kind of reshuffled that around. So to me, I'm looking at this and
if Trevor Lawrence wasn't drinking the night before.
See, and that's the pause. And that's what I said. That's what Danny was like. Danny was like, hey, well, yeah, but it's Trevor Lawrence. Like, do we really believe am I going to pick T-Law over a guy with the Bills? And I said, here's the deal. The Bills are already telling you that they have a huge red flag. They cannot stop the run. Mm-hmm. What do you have to be able to do in the playoffs? You have to be able to stop the run. Otherwise, you can't gain control. Now, their offense can do that with Josh Allen, but I'm looking at this as a whole. Look, we saw Nick Foles is a Super Bowl champ because he went on a heater at the end of the year. We're saying that Trevor Lawrence couldn't do the same thing and just go on an absolute heater at the end of the year. I'm not, listen, and this is just, I'm getting in probably over my skis a little bit, but I just was looking at my kind of intrusive thought from this game was this Jaguars team might actually be good.
I mean, the thing is Trevor Lawrence was a number 1 overall pick. And I'm a big Trevor Lawrence guy, and I know this is from almost a decade ago at this point, but he is a guy that's gotten paid now. He's won a playoff game. He was, at least going into that draft, he was like, oh yeah, Trevor Lawrence is the number 1 overall pick. Who's going number 2? That was the conversation we were having in that draft class, and then we had to figure everything else out. And so that's what was so interesting for the whole 18 months prior to that. So he still got some of that in him, but he's still got, don't know where the hell he's tossing the ball. But on the other side of the ball with the Colts, Daniel Jones tears his Achilles. I have it in the notes. He's an injury risk, and this was even before I knew that the Achilles was even torn completely because he had the broken leg on the opposite side. And so it is kind of a weird thing in this division where it's I'll start with the Titans because usually I forget the 4th team in a division. Whatever, they may figure something out. Whatever, they hire a new coach this offseason. We'll see. Houston, obviously, their defense is young and really, really good. See if CJ Stroud can keep things rolling and keep things on the track. the Jags, we just talked about how good they are. Well, the Colts just traded their 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner, assuming that Daniel Jones was going to be their guy. He's out for the next year. Your top 5 pick over the last couple of years, Anthony Richardson, has proven to be a bust. Even Riley Leonard, who was like, all right, fine, whatever, but he wasn't going to win that game for you against the Colts or against the Jags. What do you think the Colts have as like they're in the same spot they have been for like the last 7 years? We got everything. We just need a quarterback.
This is basically the NFL in a nutshell, is that you double down in the middle of the season thinking that you're on one, you're going there. I mean, look, I think when they made that
8-2, they're 8-5 now.
And that's when they made this trade, I thought it was a little rich. I thought that they gave up a little too much for Sauce Gardner, but I understood why they did it. You're going to give up that much when you think you're going to win a Super Bowl. They were looking at their offense. They were looking at their corner room. I mean, Xavier Howard basically was forced into retirement. He was like, I'm done. I can't play anymore. I mean, so they were like at their wits' end. And then they had Charvarius Ward, who was injured. So they finally come back in and they're like, look, let's get Sauce. He'll be perfect for what we need. He can play the boundary corner position. We'll put Charvarius Ward as he kind of eases back into it. We'll put him to the field. We're going to do a lot of different stuff with Lou Anarumo. This defense is really, really good. But to your point, look, I did not know the extent of the Anthony Richardson injury until like really this week when it became to the forefront of like, oh yeah, they really only have one quarterback on this roster. It's Riley Leonard. Anthony Richardson.
They're working out 44-year-old
Phillip Rivers. Yeah, so Phillip Rivers is probably going to be the quarterback for the Colts to finish this game. They're going to wheel him out in Week 18 against the Houston Texans, who are in a fight for their life for the playoffs. They have to win.
The Houston Texans. Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter, Azeez Al-Shaair.
The 44-year-old.
Jalen Petrie. Come on down.
Someone was like, he's just trying to get away from his kids, man. He got him on his
kids. He's got 18 of them.
He's like, I gotta get out of the house, man.
He's got an entire village of children. Imagine that. Hold on, Cody. You're the only one with kids here. Would you step into a pocket just to play the Houston Texans? Just be like, I can't take this anymore.
Hey, for a night of sleep in a hotel room, you might do it, man. Your wife's gonna be mad at you when you come back. She's gonna be super pissed. If hopefully one of your parents lives at the house. But yeah, this is so what looked like it was going to be great has now turned into an absolute nightmare. And there's no way. My only thing and my only sneaky suspicion, well, they don't have a first-round draft pick, but is that maybe you can get one of these guys that we mentioned up at the top of the show falls into the second round, because I don't think that a lot of people like this 2026 class falls into the second round. You can maybe do like a Tyler Shook. Maybe he turns into like the next Russell Wilson, or even like I know Lamar's always lumped into that group of guys because he was like the last pick of the first round, which by the way was completely stupid. Jalen Hurts. So if you think about that, like if you could get that production, I think the Colts would totally take that. All right, let's talk about the ass kickers of the NFL, which is the Texans. I know you don't want to talk very much about this. We'll keep this.
This is like the third week in a row at this point, because I honest to God, Cody, I sat there watching the game just like, yep, this is what happens. They'll excite you in the third quarter because they came out with a really great adjustment. Chris Jones was like, all right, I'll play some football now. But then it was just like Andy Reid's like, how do I call an offense? I don't know.
Yeah, the fourth down play with the quads bunch screen reverse thing that they did.
Just run the damn ball.
Again,
line up and run the ball.
But it's the same thing. Like, it's so funny, like that things are so cyclical. Like human nature is human nature. Like time, it really is a flat circle a lot of times. And it's like the same things. People are now going back to when he got fired with the Eagles, and it's kind of the same things. Like he completely forgets to run the ball. The clock management starts coming up. I think like if you look at this game, the game came down to third down, and they were 4 for 14 on third down. They were 1 for 3 on fourth. And in those, in those third and fourth downs, Mahomes threw 3 picks.
Yeah, and like one of them's an arm pick. The final play of the game is like Travis Kelce doing Travis Kelce stuff. He makes another drop, and the one of them is just an NFL pick. It happens, and especially for a guy like Patrick Mahomes, is gonna fling it around. But like I mean, and the question is like, is the dynasty over? No.
Well, I think this era, look, we even go back to like Tom Brady. There were really 2 cycles. You had the early years, which Mahomes had well surpassed Brady in the early years, but he also kind of had a better offense around him. Then you're going to go through a little bit of a lull. We've talked about it before, like the Karlaftis contract is killing them. They can't figure out the defensive line. What are they going to do when Chris Jones? Because let's be honest, take Chris Jones out of the equation. This defense is a bottom 3rd defense.
Mm-hmm.
Period. End of story. Like,
it's such a weird thing because a year ago they were great.
I just think it's like it's what we talked. Like we talked about this in the preseason.
Bolton, like that was the big offseason signing. That's the guy you can actually put on the outside, bringing Trent McDuffie back inside. Where is he?
Right, hadn't been able to get on the field. You have really the inconsistent play opposite McDuffie. McDuffie is forced to pretty much play outside corner, which he's good, not great at. You don't like your safety room is kind of it's again. Good, not great. Your linebacker play, you want to play a lot of base. Your linebacker play is good. Again, they're good in that system, right? Like Bolton will have like a play where he goes the wrong direction. And there's voids a zone. It's a big play. I think Tranquil is really good in the role that he plays. Tranquil's, I think, is a little bit underrated. I think Chanel's underrated. But then you go and you look at the front line, and it's been something you have talked about literally since the offseason of just like the defensive line has got to get figured out at some point because you can't just be like, oh, hey, Chris Jones, you're like, oh, you're pushing like 35. We need you to turn it on today. And again, he always kind of, and he did, but like how consistent is that going to be like even next year when he's going to be a year older? So I do think like, I don't think that it's over in the sense like, oh, well, the Broncos now own it. The Chargers are now the second best team. I think it's over in the sense like pause, reset, reevaluate. Let's actually get some real receiver talent because like Xavier Worthy, for instance, what does he do after he gets the ball?
He's just the guy who got it.
Right. So that's my point. It's like you have got like even with him, like he's supposed to be special, but he's really only a deep ball threat. But even then, like he's not a Rashee Rice, where Rashee Rice gets the ball and then makes plays. I think Noah Gray is fine. I think Noah Gray will blossom the moment Kelsey is not on the roster.
Well, and I think he's just kind of off. I mean, we talked about it after I think it was the Dallas game where he caught the ball unconscious. He had 2 pretty big drops in this game. And then again, it's just like sometimes I think it is such a weird thing where it's like you're going back to the end of Philadelphia for Andy Reid. And I think if you're Brett Veach, if they don't make the playoffs this offseason, you have to have the conversation. You at least have to sit down. Like, I'm not saying fire Andy Reid. I'm not that guy. Sit down, have a conversation about Matt Nagy because that is a real problem, at least with this offense, because the moment Eric Bieniemy left, something changed with this offense, and it's just something different, and it's the only question can be that, or the only answer should be that. And then I would have the question of, like, and it's the third thing on the list for sure because Spags has been so great. But, like, talk about Spags and talk about, like, just because the things that you've been saying, the scheme is just kind of old. People know when the blitzes are coming because, and I'm not saying that Houston's offense looked great because that third quarter was terrible, but when they scored the touchdown, I was like, yeah, that was just kind of like everything looked very simple. Like they knew exactly when things were coming. And like, yeah, the NFL is getting smarter around you. How do you keep moving things around? I'd rather be a little bit early, like a Howie Roseman was. I'd hate for Andy Reid's career to end for the second time being fired by his own guy, Brett Veach, instead of a Howie Roseman guy. And it's like the same type, but it is the situation that you're ending up in where it's like the NFL's moving and you're not moving with it. What do we do? Sometimes your coaches do lose their fastball at the same time. I just hate that it's happening to my favorite all-time coach.
Yeah, it's just a weird look. You go through this stuff. They've kind of missed on some of these. You know, they had one really good defensive draft. You kind of have missed on some things on the D line. Karlaftis has kind of become meh at best, and exactly. So I think. It's like
Felix Udike Uzama, their first round pick. I mean, he was the end of the first round. It was kind of like, yeah, he's from Kansas City, drafts in Kansas City. You got to draft the Kansas City kid, the Kansas City Chiefs. Whatever. I get that, but at the same time, it's like you got a football team to run here, and you're not making your team any better. And their defense was so good at that time that I was just like, yeah, let's see if they can add a guy that can join their pass rush. Well, your second best defensive lineman is also an overpaid $100 million defensive end. What do you do with that now? And like over the last 3 years, it's been Charles Omenihu, and now he's the same age as Chris Jones and not as good as Chris Jones. So like what are the things that are keeping you current as a team? I think Brett Veach is the guy to figure that out. You have to ask those tough questions. And I think they start at the top of the team with, and this is me saying this, and I'm just frustrated right now as for a team that's 6-7 has been to 5 out of the last six Super Bowls. I'm speaking to these are first world problems, but at the same time, damn, dude, this is tough to watch because you're seeing the same exact mistakes from the biggest cornerstones, whether it be Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, or Chris Jones is playing really well, but Andy Reid is also culpable in this. And I don't think a lot of people are holding him accountable because he's not actually on the field. But again, he's sending in the play. He's got to figure something out there too.
Yeah, and I think to wrap this one up is just the big question hanging over the Texans is, can you figure out the offense? I think we all know Stroud is more than capable. I feel like they have a decent running back room. They have a decent receiver core. So it's just like, and look, we talked about it in the offseason. A lot of this has to do with the offensive line getting figured out, but it's just like, hey, McVay figured it out with them when they were having struggles. What was it last year? Like, I need you to figure it out because you have a historic defense. So let's go to a historic defense that is getting wasted because of no offense. So basically the same.
They had offense. What are you talking about?
But at a completely different level. Yeah, they had an offense against the Titans. So Shedeur versus Cam, I actually think we're looking at this is going to be legendary going forward. Here's the thing about Shedeur. I think a lot of people, and it came down. Now, I think he slid way too far. I don't understand why they didn't take him in front of Dylan Gabriel. I think sometimes you take a guy like – I think what happened was there was a lot of noise around him. I think Dion didn't help him out at all. I think him telling guys that he wasn't going – look, he learned a lesson. He dropped. He went to the Browns. But I think with him, he holds the ball way too long. But I think that he can be a good and adequate quarterback. I think he's not as athletic as a lot of people think he is. I don't like he's not
he's Geno Smith.
Yes. I think that to me is yes, I thought that was his comp to begin with, was like a very much of a Geno Smith. Like, he's probably going to be a 25 touchdown, 15 to 17 interception guy. He's going to take a bunch of sacks. He's going to be tough. He's going to show up. He had 350 plus passing yards. But then the Browns gave up 31 points. So it's like, look, the one time you guys get offense, you give up 31 points. So it's just, again, it's the Browns.
Yeah, and I think your point about like Shedeur and Cam are both going to be good. We talked about this in the last few weeks, or at least I've mentioned this in the last few weeks. The like trending points of like one guy started at the top of the graph and the other guy started at the bottom of the graph. I think one guy's trending down, one guy's trending up, and I think they'll end up at the same spot where like both of them probably should have been like late second round, third round picks in a regular year if there were like two other quarterbacks, whereas like there's a top pick and another guy that can middle or somewhere around there. And it's just like, no, the Titans needed a quarterback, or at least they thought they did, and they're going to be reorganizing their organization, I guess. Again. And then the Browns are just the Browns, where it's like Jimmy Haslam's like, gimme. I want it really, really bad. And so it is kind of interesting. But one thing that the Browns have gotten correctly, Harold Fanning Jr. can play tight end really, really well. David.
Yeah, him and Njoku are going to be – those guys are going to be not fun to mess with. Look, people were off on Fanning because he wasn't a real tight end, but he wasn't fast enough to be a receiver. But it's like, yeah – there's a ton of those guys in the league catching a lot of balls. So I think he'll be fine.
One more loss for the Browns. They have uniform sponsored by Dude Wipes, which, I mean, Dude Wipes is fine, whatever, great as a company. Browns, what the hell are you doing? Like,
Look, again, I've mentioned this on the show before. We have a saying in our house, like, they're so ugly, they're cool. I actually thought those jerseys were so ugly that they were kind of cool. Though Bo did not, my soon-to-be 8-year-old did not agree with me. He thought they were dumb, and the Browns should always have their orange helmets. So there you go. 8-year-old ringing in on the jersey swag of the Browns.
And that concludes Fashion Police on LTB.
Yes, there was our segment.
All right, your Broncos get a win over the Raiders in the most boring game possible. Just grinding it out. And I know that it was like it ended up being like a normal score, like 24-17. It should have been 7-0. If that. But shouts to PS2. You have a good time watching your Broncos play. I think it's a perfect time for you to be watching your team play, because it's like, oh yeah, the defense is really good and our quarterback is boring. So I get to watch another halfway good defense try something out. And so like it is kind of interesting to see that. But aside from that, the Broncos, fine. Whatever. You can have the
Hey, it's okay. It's okay, Felix. I've had this same feeling for like the last decade, so don't worry about it. The last time we were in, because I had my Duke, my 12-year-old, he asked me, he was like, when was the last time the Broncos were good? And I was like, this was like yesterday driving him to school. And I was like, literally 2015. It's been 10 years since we've been any good. And then we went through quarterback hell.
On the hell though. Oh my God. Just one time. We're gonna pull out one more vintage Chiefs 3-point win, and it's like, yes, we're 7-10, baby.
Yeah, there you go. But at least you got an opportunity with a bottom of the first round pick. So I think the big takeaways for me from this game was PS2 did not allow one catch when he went up against Bowers. I think that there has been a little bit, and I'm a little bit concerned of a backslide in the defensive performance. The sacks are still there. But I think what you've seen is more teams have been willing to kind of run at Cooper and Benito to force Vance Joseph to get them off the field, to get them in base, which basically puts Alex Singleton and Sternard in there. They've been really good with Greenlaw mixing him in there. I think next year will be when we see him kind of really come back. But even secondary wise, what you're seeing is like a little bit, they're making kind of the Broncos be a little bit more vanilla on defense. And so you're just kind of getting more zone than they are playing a ton of man. They were really man heavy with a lot of pressure early, kind of getting after teams. It's just kind of been the adjustment. I also think it has a lot to do with scheduling. I think the Commanders again went full on spread, which we'll talk about here next. But again, the run game, you mentioned it, like Sean Payton literally in 2025 is like, we're going to get in 12 and 13 and 22 personnel, and we're just going to run the ball. We're going to use our fullback. We're going to throw to our fullback. Like the fullback's back in Denver. 13 of 17 carries for RJ Harvey were to loaded boxes. He did not care. They had a 10-minute drive to start the third quarter. Like you look up and the Raiders are like, oh, we get the ball for like 4 minutes in the third quarter and we have to go do something with it. They had a bunch of defensively, they were struggling. And then I thought too, like the Mims punt return, people are going to look at that last drive by the Raiders, but I think again, it goes back to game control. So I think a lot of these games in the past month for the Broncos have been like, they've kind of like the old Chiefs from a year ago. We're going to have a 4-minute offense. We're going to grind the clock. Defense is going to play bend, don't break. We're not going to do anything exotic to get you any kind of momentum. Nick's had a safe game, no deep passes. And look, I'm fine with safe games. I know everybody wants the deep throw, and it's sexy, and I love it. It's low percentage. The Broncos really don't have a deep threat. Mims hasn't really come back into that role per se, but the Raiders refuse to play man. Okay. Pete Carroll even mentioned it. We run a bunch of cover 3 because our secondary is horrible and we're just trying to learn the basics. Well, that's kind of an indictment on Carroll, but also it's like when you play stuff like that, you got to throw low. And that's basically what Knicks did.
Yeah. The Broncos keep winning, but none of the teams they keep beating are any good. So nobody cares. That's what you guys were saying about the Chiefs last year. So shut up. God, those were such good days. Anyway, another game that we can kind of move quickly through, which I mean, I lost on it, but you convinced me to start betting against JJ McCarthy, and you owe me some money for that.
No, don't. Yes, bet against JD McCarthy. Don't bet against that Commanders defense. Please, everybody listening to this, there's an asterisk on that. Do not bet against the Commanders defense. The Commanders defense is literally like falling off of a cliff. Dan Quinn and Joe Witt it looks like the Cowboys defense, right? Like they can't stop the run.
Cowboys defense is good. Hold on. Cowboys defense is bad over
the old Cowboys defense. They can't do that. Look, I think I think you put it in the notes. Like KOC was like, fine, I'll just scheme you up to be a starter. We're doing this. Also Washington is basically cooked. They're playing scared on defense. It's basically a bunch of vanilla looks. They're not doing anything. They're playing off coverage. They look terrible. It surpassed the Bengals as the worst defense in the NFL. They have no pass rush. Name one of their pass rushers. I bet you can't, right? So the offense, and then the past 2 weeks, it's almost like, look, Kingsbury does this sometimes because Kingsbury goes spread brain and he's like, well, it worked last week and we almost won. Maybe it'll work this week. And then you go the first clip, I open up the tape and it's double stack. Receivers are on the sideline and I go, I bet they're going to run zone. And what did they run? They ran zone. And it was just like, I was like, oh, what
Cody,
are we
I started
doing?
stepping with their offensive line because that's the only thing I've ever run. That's the only thing I've ever run. I was like, here we go.
And it fed right into what Flores wants you to do. He's going to stack the box. You're not going to be able to run zone. And then you're going to throw into zone pressure. Like you're going to have screens into zone. Again, why are we throwing screens to the side of Alex Van Ginkel? Again, like Kingsbury, like, it worked.
They have an actual Viking, dude. You didn't know they have an actual Viking, and you were gonna let him.
Who knows how to defend these? Like he jets up, like he is so like it's preternatural, man. Like he knows it's coming, and he like how many we see this like once every month. Like he's gonna take a pick to the house off of a bubble screen, and it's like, why are you doing that? The first clip, I was just like, oh, do I need to watch any more of this? Because it worked against the Broncos because it was the element of surprise. Like you came out and ran spread on them and they didn't know what to do. But then you had a power run element with it. You just said, nah, we're going to go I'm going to go back, get out the 2012 Texas Tech playbook. And like when we had Baker Mayfield, let's run that. And it was like, what are we doing? And then again, Jaden Daniels gets hurt. Not surprised. You don't have a tight end on you don't have a tight end on there. Ertz goes down. So they don't have their tight end on there. So it's just like when it rains, it pours in Washington.
Speaking of which, when it rains, it pours.
Oh, what an ugly game.
Tampa, they drop one to New Orleans. And I think Tyler Shough is a fun backup. And I think the comp for him, he's more athletic, Davis Mills, where like whatever quarterback they draft next, just hold on to Tyler Shough because like that guy might go down for a few games. You might rattle off a few. You don't know what can happen. And like Kellen Moore can draw something up apparently. Like, I mean, I don't think the jury's still out on him as a head coach, but like figure something out in the NFC South is just dirty enough that you can pull off wins like this. And I mean, who knows what might happen? Brandon Staley's doing something.
Yes. This defense, like Brandon Staley circa 2020 is back. This defense is now, I think they're second in EPA per play in the last month. So since week 10, they're second in EPA per play. The Saints have now beaten, they only win in their division away games. So they've won at Carolina, at Tampa Bay. They finished with at Atlanta. So are we going to see a dub there too? Like they're going to pull an away dub against all the teams. But I do think, look, this roster has massive holes that we all know from the Peyton and Dennis Allen days that it had gotten bloated with a lot of these older players. I do think like they'll probably eventually move on from Alvin Kamara. I think like defensively, there's some big names that like Cam Jordan probably needs to retire after this year, which I think he is. So like there's certain guys like that probably are going to move on. They're going to be able to kind of reshuffle. But what a positive sight. If you are a Saints fan, like you're listening, you're looking at this and you're like, okay, there is light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to have some good draft picks. We have some good young players on this roster. Staley looks like he hasn't gone full blown. Like, I forgot how to coach because I'm a head coach type deal. I think the biggest concern and the biggest takeaway here is like what's going on in Tampa Bay. They're 2-4 since they losing to Detroit. We talk, people talk all the time, like the week after teams play Detroit and the physicality. It's like the Buccaneers have never recovered from that. They have injuries. I think Baker Mayfield has been really not great the last 6 weeks, but that's because he's hurt. So it's like he's just been banged up. He's got the shoulder, he's got the ribs, he's got the leg. It's just like everything's falling apart. So let's move on to another division that can't figure out who wants to be the winner. I can't figure out.
Drunk league, dude.
Yes. I can't look, everybody knows like the resident drunk in the NFL is always the NFC South. Like they're normal. They're supposed to be that way. The NFC North is not supposed to be that way. And
the AFC North is like, well, I'm a functioning alcoholic, but it's just like, you're always passed out at the bar, dude. We know what you do. We know who you are. Dude.
Yeah, but it's usually you guys are brawling, like bar fight. You guys are the tough league, and you're going to connect on a few. But then it's like you get like I can't figure out the Ravens. I think it needs to be a complete reset. I think that they need to reevaluate everything. Lamar ran the ball against the Steelers, but it still looks. We've talked about this multiple times on this show as well. Like I feel like that element of his game needs to start showing back up.
Yeah, and like that was so interesting about the Lamar conversation in general is that like whenever his running did give out, whether it was because of age, injury, or he just stopped doing it because of those things were coming, which it seems like it is, what does that turn his passing game into? He's an average passer, and you can kind of take advantage of that, where Mike Tomlin and a defense like that of veterans are just like, all right, let's lock in and have a day against a team that like Lamar's not very good against anyway. It's the Steelers. Everybody's just going to have a tough game against them unless you're the Chiefs in the playoffs and you have a good time.
And you mentioned in the notes too, like they look the same. The defense in Baltimore looks the same as it did at the beginning of the year. They kind of went through that period where they kind of figured it out. Now they kind of look back to it. Though the argument here would be the Steelers went 3 for 3 and 3-and-out drives in the fourth quarter, and like the Ravens couldn't capitalize. So this was definitely like one of those games where I thought the Ravens offense kind of failed off of that. And then Rodgers took the game plan of like, I'm going to get the ball out fast.
Yeah.
We're going to go a little bit more spread. We're going to get the ball out fast. The Ravens love to run some fire zone pressures. They love to run zone pressure, and they were able to get that out. I thought it was very similar to what Kingsbury had against the Broncos of just like, I'm going to throw the ball as quickly as I possibly can. When the Steelers, these are both two like really weird teams where we understand the offense is not great with the Steelers, but then they'll have a game where they show up and they do really well. And then you have a game where Rodgers is yelling at the receivers to the media of like, you need to show up with your playbook on Monday. Like, and then you have the defense can't figure out if it wants to be the highest paid defense or if it needs to be like, we all probably need to retire. Right. You know what I mean? And then the Ravens are like, we can't figure out if we want to be good on offense, if we want to be good on defense. We know and we can't figure out it at the same time. So it's just a really, really weird game. Let's go to, so we had the rain game earlier, the snow game, the Bengals and the Bills. I thought, again, another Felix loss on the bet. I would have not bet against the Bills at home.
No, I felt pretty good about it until Christian Benford was like, all right, let me just show up out of nowhere, growing out of the ground and take one back to the house. And like, I mean, the Bengals offense, I mean, Joe Burrow, it's like, what some of the conversation on at least some of the shows I was watching was like, yeah, if you put anybody in that Bengals offense with those two receivers, they'll look good because Joe Flacco was looking fantastic. But then you see what Joe Burrow's able to add on top of it. It's like, oh yeah, they can do a ton of other things on top of it. I'm not saying that Zach Taylor's their coach. I still think that like fire him, hire Chris Shula, bring in Mike McDaniel as your offensive coordinator, figure some things out. But I thought they were about to win that game. And like the thing that worries me about the Bills right now is that like the offense that you were built to stop, you didn't stop. And like it had, I mean, it came down to like 2 freak plays back to back from one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And like the offense that you were built to stop, you didn't stop. What do you do now? Especially going up against the Patriots next week and an incredibly accurate quarterback that can dice you up each and every week or up and down the field.
Well, and I think these are two teams. Like the Bills to me are, I think you have again a superhero at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I think Cook is really good. The offensive line is really good against the, creating run blocking. I think running the ball in the playoffs helps, but you're not in a situation like the Bills have been in previous years where you're going to have home field advantage. So I think that's great. But what happens when you go play in Denver and it's 50 degrees, or you go and you play in some, indoor stadium? Like what are you going to do then? Or you're going to Jacksonville and it's 70 degrees outside. Like, that's great. When you got snow and you can kind of control the game and you make those teams sit on the sideline and they get cold and miserable because lake effect snow, but you just don't have that. And you mentioned it, the back-to-back freak interceptions. Look, Christian Benford, if you don't know who he is, you should know who he is. He's a Villanova product, Ola Adams product. If you don't know who Ola Adams is, he is the DB coach for the Indiana Hoosiers. So again, not shocked. There's some connectors there. Let's go.
Cody knows where every DB coach in the country used to be and like where they went to high school at. Like Cody's just a dork.
I try to know the good ones. A game that was played was against the Jets and the Dolphins. I can't figure this. You mentioned it here, like 2 is 0-7 in less than 40. Hey, you got to win. There's a first time for everything. The Dolphins are now a top 10 defense. So if you are one of those that like pays attention to like, hey, coaching candidates and like you're into that, because I feel like that's like the coaching. Like we don't watch Bravo, but we will watch Football Scoop and we will try and find out who is going where, and we want the T on that. I don't really care what's going on with the housewives.
You want to know what I Googled? You want to know what I Googled? Lane Kiffin, defensive coordinator candidates this week. That is 110% what I was like, what's going to happen with that?
Yeah. Who, if Blake Baker doesn't stay, who are they going? He just threw so much money. Blake Baker must have got more to stay there than he did to go be the head coach of today. Anyway, so Anthony Weaver, who is, again, I have been a fan of, I've mentioned on here before, he has now got the Dolphins into a top 10 defense. Go look at that secondary and tell me if you want one of those players on your team. I know Mika Fitzpatrick's down there now. They did that weird swap with the Steelers. Okay, him, but then go name their corners. You're not going to find one. Winning with no secondary, chaos on offense. The offense went for almost like 200 yards of rushing. So it's like, why can't we do this in September and October? Why can we only do this now in December? And then we get in a situation where we have to go play Buffalo or Kansas City or the Patriots in like 30-degree weather.
Yeah. All right, Seahawks and Falcons, the game of the birds. I was gonna say dirty birds, but only one of them is dirty.
Yeah, only one of them is a dirty bird.
The other one doesn't exist. It was a classic, and I think we're kind of seeing this over the last couple of weeks. Is that Sam Darnold's kind of like what he did last year, was kind of just like tripping as we go along. We'll see as the year ends, and hopefully that's not what ends the Seahawks season, but it's what ended the Vikings season last year. But the defense was fantastic, so we're seeing the Seahawks continue things along that way. But I don't think there were a ton of notes to pull from that game aside from your boy Nick Emmanwori going off.
Coming out game. Again, I say it every year. There will be a kid that drops to the second round that will be one of the best nickels when teams start defining that position and drafting for that position and quit worrying about it being labeled as a nickel. You are going to find these guys, these teams know it, and they get them. I mean, the Falcons have Billy Bowman, who I think is going to end up being one of the better nickels in the NFL as well. They got him too in kind of what is that, second or third round spot. So yeah, Emmanwori, he is kind of like he's bigger than Kyle Hamilton and kind of moves like Kyle Hamilton. Now, I'm not saying he's Kyle Hamilton. Please do not get in the comments and be like, I can't believe you said he's Kyle Hamilton. I did not say that. I said he moves like him. But I thought this was a breakout game for him. Very vanilla defense from Seattle. Seattle. I watched the game. Look, they're playing Kirk Cousins. They know Kirk Cousins can't move. They're not a big blitz team, so this wasn't one where they're going to turn up the heat. So they didn't do anything. They just, they basically played a lot like the Texans. Like, we're just going to stop the run. We're going to force you to throw the ball. We're going to win. Like you mentioned here, quit tipping Kirk's passes. You're messing up his stats. I think
he's gonna retire like tomorrow, dude.
Just no, he is getting no. Kirk Cousins is getting paid. He is going to finish out that contract. You are either going to have to cut him and pay and just be like, hey, put it in a duffel bag. I'm gonna turn it into Cole's cash. Just put Cole's cash in a duffel bag, and then I'm gonna put that he probably drives like a Ford Explorer or something, and he's gonna drive it to his Michigan house,
his cookie cutter house.
So it's I think the silver lining for the Falcons, really, if you look at this, is that they figured out a pass rush. They got to figure out the secondary. It's still a really bizarre scheme. They're trying to blitz. They're trying to keep up with the Vikings in blitzing, but they're trying to play man coverage because they got AJ Terrell. Bates is kind of lurking around somewhere. I think the Watts kid who came from Notre Dame, big man guy, Billy Bowman, coming from Oklahoma, kind of plays a lot of match coverage. So they feel like, hey, we got these guys, but they don't have enough of them they're not the Broncos. They don't have two legitimate corners that can play a ton of man, and then your safeties can kind of be interchangeable right there. But James Pierce appears to be a dude, 6 sacks. He's come on in the last half, which is what you want to see. I don't want all the sacks at the very beginning when no one knew who you were. I want sacks when people kind of understand who you are. He's had 6 sacks in 5 games. But that defensive system, it's a weird system. 5-man fronts, and then you're just playing a lot of cover one.
All right, NFC North matchup, Bears Packers. It was a very good game. I think these are just basically 2 even teams, and they play again in the next couple of weeks. And we'll see. It might just be the same exact game, just flipped results. And so the pick at the end of the game is tough for Caleb, but like, he's had so many comebacks over these last couple of weeks. I think he's kind of bought himself a little bit of credit in that department. But in the case for Christian Watson, I think that in all the receivers that they do have, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, I think Christian Watson obviously fits the bill the most as a number 1 receiver. But like, just stay healthy, dude.
Just stay healthy.
But he is a dude.
Well, and he's bigger than you think he is. I mean, he's
like 6'5" and a half, and he might be that full 6'6".
He's big, and he's like, when you watch him as a former defensive back, I'm just like, oh, nah, I'm good, bro. Like, what do you do? He's so much faster than every. Like,
I got the other guy.
How did he end up in North Dakota State? To me, that's what I want to know. I thought, you mentioned it. Love had the bad sack early, interception by Love. The Bears did a really good job of kind of doing the whole deal. Like, I thought the Panthers kind of showed you how to beat the Packers, especially like, look, make Love throw deep balls into zone coverage. Like, make him be a check down Charlie. He's going to get pissed. Mm-hmm. Matt LaFleur is going to quit trying to run the ball because he doesn't really want to run the ball. He wants to throw the ball with his cool quarterback that can just throw like 70 yards.
Look, guys.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, I got Christian Watson who can run. Like, I'm trying to throw the ball in the slot. Yeah. So, but like you mentioned it, like the pick was tough for Caleb, but play action in the second half was really, really good for him. I think they had 50% of his passes in the second half was on the run. He completed most of them. So I think like that's the MO. I think you just need so what's the difference going to be for, Ben Johnson, Detroit versus Ben Johnson, Chicago? It's going to probably be, he's going to have to go get some element of that Shanahan McVay system where you're getting these dash concepts, these boot concepts, these waggles, I'm going to move the pocket. I'm going to get him going just because I think Caleb is one of those that he's really good in kind of that area where he can kind of make plays on the run. We've seen that. That's what he's good at. Speaking of McVay, we'll finish with this and then we'll just highlight. We're taping this on Tuesday instead of Monday. Someone was a little tired, not feeling very good.
I'm sorry, I don't feel good, man. I chop it out.
Yeah. I DoorDashed some chicken noodle soup to Felix last night, so he's much better. That's why we're able to record this in the morning. Don't die on me. See, he can't even hold it together. So the Rams and Cardinals. Look, I worry about. Look, I love. Look, I keep saying look. because I'm trying to be convincing. I like Gannon. I like this defense. I like Petzing, what he does on offense. I think they're in trouble with the contract with Kyler Murray. They don't have Brissett is Brissett. He's going to regress to the mean. You don't want to, that Connor is hurt. So like a lot of your 12 personnel stuff just is not working because you don't have the run game. They've had injuries on defense. It's a fun defense. They're good, not great. At one point it was like a top 10 DVOA defense, which I don't think a lot of people know. So I think is Gannon's time over? Like, are we going to look up and it's like, yeah, probably going to have to hit full reset on this. We did the whole thing where we buy a bunch of free agents. It didn't work. And now, cause I think, look, he'll be the hottest DC candidate at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of seeing what Philadelphia's defense did that last year after he left, and then they get Vic Fangio and fix things up. But it'll be really interesting to see like him on the market. I think him and Mike McDaniel will be the two hottest coordinator candidates out there. Former head coach is still young, could get some movement, mature as your coordinator. But I want to talk Monday Night Football real quick. Jalen Hurts looked horrendous, and maybe was that Jesse Minter figuring some things out, or was it just like Jalen Hurts cannot throw the ball in the middle of the field? The same way it said, like we said, JJ McCarthy can't throw to the left, Jalen can't throw to the middle of the field, and it has become a problem for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Well, again, this is a matchup issue for him. They love teams that are going to either play match outside, play a lot of cover 3 because they're going to bring another guy into the box so that they, because of Saquon Barkley. I think teams have kind of figured out like, oh, hey, the offensive line's not that great. We can play some zone coverage. And once you start playing some zone coverage, Minter does a really good job with flipping the zones, changing up the zones, doing a lot of too high disguises. Derwin James can move around, take Goddard. I mean, Goddard's kind of been that engine of like when they can't get the ball down the field, throw it to Goddard, he'll figure it out. The biggest indictment, and this is, you mentioned it, Hurts was 5 for 10 for 99 yards and 4 interceptions when he held the ball over 2.5 seconds. So time to throw, if you've never paid attention to it, start paying attention to it. We mentioned it with Shedeur. It's something that really does matter.
But what does that mean? Like for you, if you're scouting a quarterback, if he's like just holding on to the ball, does that mean he's just like, if you give him an extra guy to look at, he's just going to struggle? Like he's having difficulty reading that defense for one reason or another. And is it just that extra guy back there and you're just like giving him that extra second and it's like, and you got him.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. The Rams did it to Darnold. I mean, Darnold was holding the ball for like over 3 seconds in that game with it, where I think he threw like 3 or 4 picks as well. And it was like, yeah, the reason why is because these quarterbacks are having trouble getting through their progressions. If their first guy's not open, he just gets pissed. I thought a great example of this was the last play of the half. Okay, there's 10 seconds on. Sirianni was able to get an extra second put back on. They're not going to kick the field goal. They're going to go out there. What do? They throw a fade ball, and Brown is covered. And you see Hurts and he's just like, what are we doing, man? He's covered. Where else am I supposed to go with the ball? I think the knock on the offense has been all year. It's a high school offense, which basically means it's fades and perimeter screens, right? And then, you have a couple of, they run Y cross they sprinkle in there every once in a while to get one of those guys. Now he throws a dart to Devontae Adams, like in a clutch time to get that ball down there. But then again, it's just like, hey, you end up. And then of course, as my dad always says, kickers my dad refuses. My dad is hilarious. He's like, he refuses to call the kicker of any team he's on by their name. And he had so his 8th grade kicker this year, because he coaches junior high, and he's great at it. He's great for those kids. I don't know how he does it, but he's like, the kid was like, "Why do you always call me kicker?" He goes, "Hey, because you're a kicker, man." He goes, "Hey, the moment you miss a field goal, you ain't on the team anymore."
Me and your dad would have got along. I'd played for him. Me and the kicker don't care. We do not like each other. You got one job, just like mine is the block. Lock in.
Right. And of course the kid just started laughing. I mean, but it's just so funny. But yeah, so the Chargers game comes down to kickers. And then the fact that, which by the way, they have a good kicker. It's not like he's not good. And then Hurts just has a total meltdown. Just real brief, because we always cover the Thursday game. Falcons, Buccaneers. I can't again.
The Bucs need it more than anything, and so that's why I would take them in this spot. But because of all the reasons that you listed with the Falcons and how hurt Tampa is,
yeah, it's going to be an ugly game. Regardless of whether it rains like it did for the Saints, it's just going to be an ugly game. It's going to be a perfect Thursday night game where you can just put it on the background. You can, do whatever you need to do.
They'll probably wear some ugly uniforms or something like that.
Roll through your phone. Yeah, of course. They didn't do the creamsicle tops this year. They just said, no, we're going to go with the white creamsicles. I'm like, why? That's dumb. Like the whole point of the fact that your creamsicle is that you get to see that ugly orange. That's what I want to see. That's what the people want.
They're nice. I like them.
Give the people what they want. Don't give an all white uniform. Nobody wants to see that. All right. Hey, again, thanks for joining us today on Let's Talk Ball. Again, if you are on a browser, please go subscribe on either Apple, Spotify, or wherever you do your podcast. It helps us out. Make sure to give a rating and review. Again, we're trying to get Felix out of his mom's basement. I'm going to stand by this. Hey, I had to DoorDash him chicken noodle soup the other day, guys. Come on, just give us a rating and review. Make sure it's a high one. Give us 5 stars again, because it's for Felix, not for me. All right, go watch football.